I'm very excited to introduce this incredible panel. With us, we have from The Crown, Sarah Bridge, from Halston, Amanda Krieg Thomas, from I May Destroy You, Ciara Elwis and Matt Biffa, and from Lovecraft Country, Liza Richardson, and from WandaVision, Dave Jordan and Shannon Murphy. Hello and welcome to you all. And thank you to the Brits for hardcoring up. It's 1 a.m. there, almost 1 a.m. So, we'll be nice to everybody. And, please send your questions in because we'll be answering those throughout. First of all, congratulations to you all on your Emmy nominations. I want to know what you were doing when you found out you'd been nominated, because sadly, they don't announce this on TV or anywhere, and you have to scroll through. So, Liza, how did you find out you'd been nominated for an Emmy?
I think one of the guys in my office texted me while I was walking the dog. It was very fun.
Sarah, what about you?
I was also out for a walk. I was out with my 1-year-old, and it was actually a music editor on The Crown that texted me, but I had no idea the nominations were even happening that day. So yeah, I was quite surprised.
Amanda, how did you find out you'd been nominated?
I also kind of forgot they were happening, and I was home in Connecticut with my family actually for the first time in a year, and a friend texted me and just said, "Congrats." And I was like, wait, what? And it was nice to be able to just look at my parents over coffee and say, I was nominated for an Emmy. They were excited.
Oh my, I love that. Matt, how did you find out you'd been nominated for an Emmy?
I was camping with my children in North Devon, and Ciara texted me and said, "Call me." And I was like, pardon my language, shit, like everything's gone wrong, something's on fire, there's a catastrophe. So I called immediately thinking there was this disaster, and she was like, "We've been nominated for an Emmy." And I was just standing looking out over this amazing cliff and the ocean and everything like that, blown, with my mind blown, I have to say.
So, Ciara, since you sent the message, how did you find out?
I got like little variety pop-ups saying that they were being announced. So I was like, oh, that's now. And then obviously had to go through onto the website and scroll through. And I didn't know you could check categories because obviously I've never done this before. So I scrolled through every single category being like, nope, not that one, not that one, not that one. There's so many. I got about 20 minutes in and found it, and then was just ran through to my boyfriend. He was on a call and just went just had his hand up no, not right now. And I was like, okay, I'm going to tell someone else. Just sitting on my own, no one to tell. Told the dog.
Dave, how did you find out WandaVision had been nominated?
I wasn't following it. I knew they were going to be announced, but I wasn't following it. And I got texted 3 minutes after our category was announced by another music supervisor who I think they thought they were going to get nominated. So it was pretty wild.
Shannon, and what about you?
Dave called me right after that, and we looked online together, and I think we had about maybe 2 or 3 minutes to just say, "Oh my God, this is so cool." And then we immediately had to go into a spotting session.
So, Liza, I want to talk about, Lovecraft Country. And what I love about it is this whole sense of the displacement. We're in the future. We're not in the future. Where are we? How did you navigate the music for the series?
Well, that whole idea of time travel and music displacement. That's true for the characters too. They are in different time zones and different realities and that kind of thing. So it's an idea that our showrunner, Misha Green, it was very important to her. So I I loved the fact that we were playing modern music in the 50s, Chicago. I just thought it was great. For me, the most exciting thing about working on Lovecraft Country was the ability, the fact that we could use spoken word and poetry so featured and treat them like a song placement. And that, I did this radio show in the 90s that featured poetry and spoken word. And so I didn't even realize that was going to be such a featured part of Lovecraft Country. And I have an amazing spoken word collection. So when I was being asked to put forth some poems and different speeches and stuff, I was delighted because it was kind of right up my alley. I was so excited. And I've never worked on a show that we were doing that before. So I was so happy.
Yeah. And Amanda, for Halston, you frequently collaborate with Ryan Murphy. What did he tell you about Halston, and how did you navigate the music for this series?
Well, you hit it on the head. I do a lot of projects with Ryan and with Alexis, who are, they are both super involved in the music for everything. And they've also been working together for, 20 years. So there's a shorthand there. So, by the time it gets to me too, it's a lot of okay, here's what we need for this. Here's what we need for that. The vision, and also for Halston, all 5 episodes were directed by Dan Minahan, who also was this, this time period, this lifestyle Halston. It was they lived that. And so there was such they were just really precious about all the music in it and what went into it. And it was just trying song after song. And at the beginning, Dan was here are my 8 playlists of music for Halston. And I think, it was really important that any song that went in the show was through the lens of the character. So I think, people think of 70s shows in a very specific way. And the music in the show was all filtered through a certain chicness. That was really important, keyword for Alexis, keyword for Ryan was it should all feel chic. And also it goes through a lot of decades. So a lot of different, we use Tears for Fears and as well as stuff from the 70s, the Vertigo, Relight My Fire and all of that. So it no matter what decade it was, the music needed to sort of feel very chic. And on this particular project, the first introduction I got was the Liza Minnelli performances. So that all stuff happened really very early. And it was okay, here's what we want. It's got to feel real. We have Liza, we have to make this actress sound like Liza and record her in New York, and it was pre-COVID. And most of these things that all had to happen very quickly. So, it was just a lot of, with the on-camera stuff, we had a few of those that all had to sort of feel real and feel relevant, but also feel very heightened because we were in this very heightened specific world and referencing very specific things. So it was quite a journey. And then we had to clear a lot of very inappropriate content as Halston was at Studio 54, and lots of creatively wording what you were seeing happening at Studio 54. So that's a lot of times where we kind of come in and have to get very creative with that side of the process. And Halston was one where we pulled off some magic, I think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm going to come back to the clearing conversation in a second, because a lot of you have had interesting song choices this, in your respective series. But Ciara, you dove into the 80s and Princess Diana's journey for The Crown season 4. Talk about how you navigated that and, the music for this season.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you say, we're delving into the 80s, which was an exciting prospect. And Peter Morgan, the showrunner, and I kind of talked very early on about including a lot more commercial source music alongside quite a few kind of on-camera moments throughout as well. So really kind of collaborating with him very early on at script level. And the particular episode, Fairy Tale, which is episode 3 of the season, was kind of quite a standalone piece where we really followed Ciara through the emotional journey and the importance of kind of really digging into songs that both reflected and heightened that emotional journey throughout. And then there were kind of standalone pieces like episode 5, where we looked at Michael Fagan and the kind of more disillusioned Britain of the Thatcher years, which kind of felt like quite a standalone musical piece where we got to include lots of bands that I never anticipated being able to feature in The Crown, such as Joy Division and The Cure and The Beat. And so, yeah, quite a fun journey throughout. And then through to on-camera performances like recreating Phantom of the Opera with Emma Corrin, who sang live on set, and having a kind of 28-piece orchestra recording at 7 a.m. in the theatre with like 40 minutes to record this before filming commenced, etc. So yeah, it was a journey for sure, and a fun one.
Yeah. Ciara and Matt, talk about working with Michaela Coel for I May Destroy You and that music.
I mean, I think for me, it was a bit different for Ciara, I think, but I think for me, it was, you were feeling your way through it. I remember one of the producers rang me up really early in the process and said, Michaela says, who's Van Morrison and why is he in my show? Because one of the editors had put a Van Morrison song in. And that was a good indicator of like, okay, well, we definitely know that we're not going in that direction. But, it kind of, for me, it kind of revealed itself as we went along. And it wasn't unconfusing, I don't think. Ciara, you can jump in here. But it was like, it wasn't clear cut as to how it was going to go from the get-go. It was very... me and the editors used to talk a lot about what does Michaela mean here? Is she criticizing millennials? Is she just observing? What is she saying? And sometimes we couldn't really quite get to the bottom of it.
I think essentially the kind of main sort of point that we were sort of supposed to address was that we didn't want, and Michaela and Sam were very clear on this, they didn't want the music to sort of lead anyone in a particular emotional direction, which like sounds in itself obviously slightly counterintuitive to what we would usually do. But it's, even when you're saying, okay, well, we're not going to do that, actually, unless you're directly playing against, it's actually quite hard to find like a happy medium. So there's a lot of like trial and error with songs that you think would work really nicely, that then actually lyrically either didn't work because they were too on the nose or they were just too alien to what we were seeing, because obviously the subject matter was quite delicate a lot of the time. So it was really important to make sure that we weren't sort of being insensitive in our uses, but also Michaela was very, very keen for the music to sort of open another direction for people to feel something about the content that they were viewing. So that was kind of our main challenge, essentially. And then, yeah, like Matt said, I mean, she was very, very open with what kind of music we were sort of allowed to pull from. So, she was, very open to having stuff from any era, but we did end up with a lot of more contemporary stuff just because of the fact that she really wanted to represent the sort of characters that we were seeing. So there's a lot of like queer artists in there, for example. There's a lot of like London-centric artists in there, lots of people from like Southeast London, like unknown artists and things like that, because we wanted it to really sound the way it looks, which is, very London and quite, very modern.
Yeah. And Dave and Shannon, WandaVision, Agatha all along, I think as soon as that episode dropped at midnight, but I think by the morning it was like number one all over the place and became an internet sensation. What do you remember about hearing that song for the first time? And were either of you aware of what an earworm it would become?
Well,
Dave,
I can't see Shannon on my screen. So yes, we knew it was going to be a hit immediately. We wrote it to be a hit, and it all worked out. No, it's the thing I remember most about it was fantastic song, and we had to record these songs with the Lopez's in COVID, and it was early in COVID, so everything was in lockdown. We couldn't get a stage, and it had to be great because it was the Lopez's. We weren't going to get the greatest sushi chefs in the world and not the best ahi, and it was. And so Abby was where we ended up doing it. And I just remember the Kristen and Bobby were on, and I remember Kristen giving the notes about that song, and she was like, pretend like it's you're in the basement, you're having a party in your basement at a Halloween party with the Munsters. And it was just it was just so great. And then we had Catherine Hahn come in and record it later. We originally were going to have all of the cast members record on all of the songs, and we couldn't do that for COVID reasons. But then she came in and just gave it her all. And it was like, boy, there's something really special and magical here. And it was surprising that it was a number one song, but it's pretty great. And it felt like a fun thing the world needed at that moment.
Getting to hear Catherine Hahn's evil witch cackle, like in person in the recording session over Zoom, was like the highlight of working on that whole show.
And this is an interesting question that came up. We were talking about spoken word and poetry placements. How are those negotiated? Are those done in the same way as songs for contracts? And do they receive the back end royalties?
Yeah, it's a little different. It depends on whether or not they were released on an official album. Like if it was a speech from found on YouTube that had no album release, then no, it wasn't part of my thing. But yeah, we did it just like you would any other sync, and some of it was very difficult to find. Some of these, we got permission via fax. So it was fun, fun times.
Well, let's talk about clearing. I mean, tell us some of those clearing stories that you've had that, you went through. I mean, it's like, whether it's finding an artist or finding who owns the rights, like, talk about that. Amanda, do you want to start? Some of your clearing stories? Sure.
Gosh, on Halston, a couple that come to mind were at the start of episode 4. There is this 6-minute montage. It's like a Vertigo, Relight My Fire, Dan Hartman, like grand. It's like a very specific remix, and I think that song was on some playlist for something else, and then the director found this like very specific remix of it somewhere. And it was just like this flurry of emails from the editors being like, it must be this remix. Can you clear this? Because we've trained the Ryan Murphy editors at this point to like tell us when like they find weird things, and there's YouTube videos circulating. And this one was one where they were immediately like, can we use this? But it must be this remix. And we go to the label and they're like, we don't have this. It's not official. You can't use it. It's unauthorized. And then we ended up tracking down the original remixer of the track, who then said, no, it was commissioned by the label. I was commissioned by the record label to do this label of remixes. And then we had to go back to the label, and only then they were like, oh yeah, we do have this. We do. This is ours. You can license it. But it took all of that work just to get back to them to say, yes, we can represent this track. And the other one that comes to mind for Halston is there's like a very long, big Donna Summer sequence with Spring Affair at the end. And it's at Studio 54, and there was a lot going on, and she can be a little particular, and we were very nervous about that clearance, and thankfully it came in. But it was like it was a Ryan must have Spring Affair at the end of this episode. And we, I feel good that we got them excited enough about the show that they were happy to have Spring Affair in this very long, extensive Studio 54 Bacchanal montage. And it's very tasteful, super tasteful.
Sarah, what about for you? Any hurdles on the crown and clearing some of those 80s tracks?
There was, less hurdles. I guess the benefit of a reoccurring show is that, in terms of clearing stuff, people know what they're looking at, which is always helpful. Going back to episode 3, Fairy Tale, it was a song that I got into very early on at script level, and we kind of wrote it in, and then it became part of the filming, which was Edge of 17 by Stevie Nicks. And it features pre-titles. At the moment, it's the happiest moment we see Diana throughout the show. Charles has just proposed. She's euphoric, and it we talked about embedding or looking for a song that would work here and run all the way through that opening sequence and then land on her and friends dancing to it and singing to it in a club. So we pre-cleared that prior to shooting it, obviously, and that was quite straightforward. But then we requested the stems, or to ask if they were at all available, which I rarely do and rarely get if I ever do ask. But on this occasion, we received the stems, which was incredible because I'm a big Stevie Nicks fan. So getting into that, then listening to the a cappella version, we were like, wow, this is incredible and beautiful, and ended up using it over the end credits and placing it there. Mainly because at the end of that episode, we find Diana kind of in complete contrast to where we see her at the beginning, where we featured the song, which is she's then feeling incredibly isolated and alone and trying to find her position within the royal family and belong. And it felt really reflective of where we find her at that point. And thankfully, Stevie said yes, which was a relief. There's a few others where we ended up having to send perhaps the entire episode. And then also, the nature of his relationship with Diana and friendship, he wanted to see it in context with the episode, and we had Peter write a letter. And there's a couple of artists where we ended up accompanying it with, the scene and a letter, basically, to try and get it over the line, so to speak. So yeah.
All right, we are talking about clearance stories. Let's go to Ciara and Matt. Tell us some of the stories that are behind I May Destroy You.
I mean, yeah, we had tons, to be honest. Similar to Amanda, there's a lot of less than PC behavior going on. Some intentional, some obviously not at all. But we had Prodigy, which we're going to watch the clip of. That was actually denied post-shoot because of a change of the use. So originally it was cleared just for the scene where she's dancing, and then they changed it to include her doing some illicit materials prior to that, and they came back and said that it was now denied. And then we had a sort of 2 to 3 day stressathon of trying to get them to sort of rescind, and we wrote a letter, we sent the scenes, like all the sort of standard stuff, but yeah, writing a letter sort of explaining why it was very important to for us to be watching someone like do drugs over their song. It's kind of like a hard one to spin, but luckily they went for it. So very, very thankful for that.
And also Keith Flint had died, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks before.
It was very recently after Keith Flint's death. So it was obviously not good timing for us to be trying to change the posts. Yeah. And then there was some others around the mat. There was It's Gonna Rain, which is a song that sort of features through 3 different episodes, which we couldn't find the rights holder for that, I think for like 4 or 5 months. And that was one that Michaela had written into the script. So that was like a must have. And it was just, it's an old gospel song. It's not very well known. And people were just sort of passing the buck and saying they didn't own it. And luckily we finally found someone who would claim it, which was great because it's obviously
claim it and then go with Michaela being nude in one of the scenes. Yeah. I think.
Well, we had to actually re-edit that because she was going to be fully naked, and then they said that they didn't want nudity over the Reverend, which is probably fair enough. So they had to sort of slightly re-edit the sequence so that she wasn't fully nude. So there was that one as well. And then there's a few others. Obviously, we cleared Daft Punk as well. They're not the easiest to clear. So that was a letter from Michaela, the full, shebang, full episode, I think we sent for that. And then, like a sort of detailed instruction as to how the scene, how the song would feature throughout the season, because it's used like four times in 3 different episodes. So it's kind of like seeded throughout. But yeah. So there's quite a lot of letter writing, pleading and stressing, but it was, all worth it in the end.
And I spent a lot of time sort of tweeting and DMing Nigerian producers on like Twitter and Instagram, trying to get in touch with them, trying to get some sort of response so that we could use these masters that they owned. And like, you'd see these dudes like tweeting all day or like, posting all day and ignoring me. It was just like, what do I have to do to kind of clear this song? Eventually, some of them got back. A lot of them just never, ever answered. And so couldn't be in the show. But that was frustrating for sure.
And there was the 2004 stuff as well, all the like early grime, which, I mean, there's the song On the Block, which was 6 different people, literally did it on their mobile phones at the time, essentially. It's just on YouTube. It's nowhere else. And that took months, and we eventually tracked down one person on Instagram that had like a very similar name to the name, and I had to like sort of message this guy and be like, sorry, this is a bit weird, but are you this guy? And luckily he was, and he knew enough of the others to sort of manage to get it together enough for a clearance. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff obviously wasn't it's like bootleg remixes and stuff like that from that era, so just trying to find people who would admit to owning them is difficult enough.
Yeah, and we had no composer on that show, so I think we cleared something like 150 songs or something like that. So it was a lot. It was full on.
Wow. All right, Liza, you had Cardi B appear twice in Lovecraft Country and an incredible soundtrack there. Tell us some of your clearing stories.
I don't have that much to add. That's what's already been discussed. I mean, of course, the obscure choices, some deep cuts, and you're trying to find rights holders. Like what Amanda said about like going to a label and saying, "No, you own this. I swear you do," and they're like, "No, we don't." "Yes, you do." Finally, they agree with us. Reversals, stuff like that. Scene description changes, stress-a-thon. I like that. I'm going to use that.
I love it.
I like that. But I mean, the Cardi B, those are the most, it's like, well, one of them is such a violent scene. I mean, it's extremely graphic and violent, but it was no problem. So sometimes it's really hard and sometimes it's not a problem.
All right. What about with WandaVision, Dave and Shannon? I mean, talk about any stories that you have, not necessarily there, but like other shows too.
Well, specifically with the Marvel stuff, we're a little blessed that we have a long track record with the music community of how we use music and the respect level that we have. We also we work with Christine Berggren on clearances, who is the greatest in the business. But we had several issues, including Jimi Hendrix. And Shannon, why don't you talk about the Dick Van Dyke stuff?
Yeah, well, there's a episode towards the end where you see a lot of old clips of old sitcoms. And so Dick Van Dyke Show, you see the opening theme song. There's a Brady Bunch clip where 2 of the characters from the Brady Bunch are singing. One's singing, one's playing kazoo within the clip. And then the Malcolm in the Middle clip, which was actually pretty extended and contained a bunch of different cues and library songs. Basically, I just got with Alexa in Christine Berggren's office and we tracked down the cue sheets for all these old shows. Couldn't find the one for Dick Van Dyke, but we found the owner of the theme song, and we had to go through these old cue sheets ourselves and pair everything up to clear the songs that were within the clips.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so this is a question from Steve Page, who'd like to know, have you ever had to tell a director no when you've had we must have this track and it's not come through? Like, who wants to share that story?
And usually it's from YouTube and a remix, like Amanda was saying.
they found this thing they love that some random person just, I don't know.
I nearly had to do that. I didn't, but just very quickly, just going on to the impossible stuff, we had something in sex education, which was a Dr. Hook thing that ended up being a radio bootleg. And over the course of 4 months, I was on the phone to Netflix saying, I can't find who owns the master. We're going to have to use best endeavors. They were just about to sign it off. And I got an email from an AV installations company in Denver, Colorado, who had recorded the radio show in 74, 29th of January, 1974. And their dad owned the master. And, so I was terrified of having to sort of say, I'm really sorry, I cannot find in this day and age this particular master recording. It's a pretty scary thing, I think. I hate having to do that.
Some showrunners are they can't accept it, and it's a stress-a-thon. But sometimes you have people that understand and accept it and move on, and But
yeah, I mean, I think
it's a bummer.
Yeah, I think part of it is like you better be ready. You better have a great backup plan and be able to make a case for those backup plans as you're delivering the news.
Yeah.
And no is a multi-stage process.
Like, this isn't working out, but how about this?
Right.
Yeah.
There's you gotta set the table a little bit. Well, we're talking to them and it looks like it's not gonna be clearable. And then a week later, it's pretty sure it's not gonna be clearable. We're offering a lot of money. And then you gotta ease them into it a little bit. Yes. And then you should check out these other ideas.
A lot of managing expectations. Like, I feel like a lot of life is like the game of chicken of like, how close, like, when do I start planting those little seeds? But because they're also, if they are that attached, it's always going to be like, well, did you do this? Did you offer more money? Have you tried this? Can we write a letter? How many letters can we write? Are they dead? And so like, I feel like whenever I like everyone is saying, like, it's always the worst thing to have to deliver the bad news, but it's like, it's always those emails are so hard because it's like, how do I deliver the bad news in a way where they know I did everything possible and they can't question it? And then also offering the solutions, but in a way where they know I'm not giving, it's always the art of telling them no it's like quite an art that I hate doing, but part of it. It's all art.
All right. So this is another question. What is a song or clearance moment that you are most proud of in your shows? And Ciara, I'll start with you.
I mean, we just spoke about it really, but I would definitely say The Prodigy, just because it was like, it's a really, really key moment, to be honest. And like the rest of the music in that episode really like is, it was all built around that one sequence. So because we wanted to have different sort of tonal feels to each of the different sort of, not hallucinations, but sort of dream scenarios that Arabella goes through. So it was a really like pinnacle sequence, and for a while it looked like it wasn't going to happen the way that we thought we wanted it to, and we would have to change the editing, and obviously him drugging her is quite a key part of the sequence, so it really needed to be there. So I think that was probably the one in that episode anyway that I'm the most proud of. And then It's Gonna Rain again was just really, really tricky, and took a lot of time, but every time I sort of watched it back and looked at, the alternatives that we'd sent through as other ideas and stuff, like I'm just so glad we got it, because I think it just is absolutely the perfect song for those sequences. And then we used a song in episode 12 called Rain Come Down, which had been sort of set as well as one that we wanted to use after Prodigy. And it works really nicely because you have It's Gonna Rain as sort of seeded through the whole season, and then you have Rain Come Down when she sort of is in that moment of being like, okay, I'm in control now. It's not something that's happening to me. This is how I'm sort of dealing with my dealing with what happened. And again, we wouldn't have been able to have that play with lyrics if we'd had to change the song. So I think those two are probably the main ones for me. I don't know about you, Matt.
I mean, mine actually is a funny one, which was Nightmares by Easy Life. And the reason why I was super fond of that is that because for me, I found it really difficult to kind of understand, if you know what I mean. I think the good thing about this job is that you're always learning. And so I just come off Sex Education, and we use emotion all over that show. And then to come from that to this, where you have that song by Easy Life, which isn't necessarily working with what is happening in a way that it took me a while to get my head around it. And I really did sort of, sort of puzzle over it for a while. But once I got it, I was like, okay. And I found that was the song for me that was really freeing, that made me realize that actually we can kind of go kind of anywhere with this and not kind of do the usual thing, particularly that I'm used to, which, as I say, is sort of like using songs to like sort of manipulate your emotions and all that kind of stuff. To do the opposite of that as an old dog, was not easy, but I was able to embrace it afterwards.
One more, actually, now I just think of it, is there's an Aerosmith sample in Pink by Janelle Monáe and Grimes, and that was another one that we had just no reply for months and months and months, and I think they pushed the mix back twice to try and include it, and we finally heard back from Steve, so thanks, Steve, wherever you are. Probably not watching this.
Yeah. Because we didn't have like loads of money either. I mean, we had we had resolutely
pretty limited budget,
tiny budget. So we weren't able to give Steve Tyler $70,000 or whatever it is that he's used to for the other shows that he might license his stuff for. So that was great.
Yeah. Dave and Shannon, what about you? What are your most proud? What are your greatest musical moments?
I think, for us, this show's a dream project, right? Because we get to work across 6 decades. And I just think we're enormously proud that it all worked, that we got the right songwriters. They were all in songwriters. Like, they didn't do it because it was a check. They did it because they were passionate about it. This whole thing was such a love affair. We had an amazing director named Matt Shankman who directed all the episodes. And so the whole thing was really looked at like a 6-hour movie. And that's also the way it was edited. And then we got to work with Chris Beck, who had done a few things in the Marvel Universe. And I've done many, many movies with Chris Beck. And he's such an enormous talent. And he's also one of these people one of these creators that can work across genres seamlessly. And the show is constantly switching between kind of comedy and old fashioned and drama. And so I think Shannon, you should jump in. I think we're enormously proud of the way it worked, that it all came together and worked. And in the middle of, we went through several iterations musically of what we were trying. We did a lot of research before. We had thought about maybe bringing in living composers who had actually worked in those decades to do each episode. So we went down a long path on that before we had Chris kind of do all of it, because we knew Chris would do the contemporary stuff. We at one point, we were talking to artists from the various eras to sing the original theme songs. And we were also talking about having the actors do it. So and we were constantly booking sessions and canceling sessions because of the rapid COVID environment. So the fact that what came out at the end was cohesive and poignant and emotional I think we're just really proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have to just second everything that you said, especially too, just doing it so early on in COVID. We were in this weird stage of everything outside of work. No one knew what was going on, but inside too, we were kind of just like, can we do this? Oh, wait, we can. And it's sounding amazing. And so it was just really reassuring to have that, to go through. And, I mean, getting to, even though we didn't record a lot of artists, we got to record Kathleen Hanna on one of our theme songs. The Lopez's actually like have their vocals on a lot of the theme songs, almost all of them, I think. And Catherine Hahn. I mean, it was just an incredible process. And to hear all of the theme songs together, how they all stand out for every decade, for every episode, but again, work so cohesively together. It was really, really amazing.
And everybody was so everybody was a real love. It was a real love affair. The whole team was a real love affair.
Sarah, what was your proudest moment?
I think I think episode 3 for me is the episode that kind of stands out, and going on that musical journey with Diana. I think Song for Guy by Elton John, which is the scene that we just shared, where Diana is kind of losing herself in music and dance at that point and is kind of despairing. That was a classic Peter Morgan move that we were like, locked episode. It was scored by Martin Phipps, beautiful piece of score. Everything was set, and Peter came in just before the mix and was like, let's try something, let's try a commercial track over this scene. And the editor calls me and is like, can you get me something in like 3 hours? Just get some ideas over. So it was a bit like panic stations and just trying to kind of find some ideas and sending stuff over very quickly. And I explored like vocal tracks as well as instrumentals, but it felt like it needed to be an instrumental for me. And the piece of music that Emma Corrin is dancing to in that scene was like chosen by Emma on the day. She brought it with her to dance to on the day, and it was like 20 years out from the year that we're in. So yeah, and I just trying different options, but even before they then sculpted and re-edited that scene slightly, laying that song over it, it just felt so perfect. And I guess very poignant knowing how close Elton and Diana were, but also just the emotion and the movement. And then it kind of obviously bleeds into score, and it's quite a kind of juxtaposed move into the score. It's not like a smooth transition, but I think it just works really, really beautifully in that moment where she kind of falls to the ground and the score starts to swell. And yeah, it was, I'm quite proud of that particular scene.
Amanda, what about in Halston for you? What's your proudest moment?
In Halston, I was really proud of how the in all the Liza Minnelli performances turned out. There was one in particular. Well, there was a couple, and because we're like referencing specific things that happened, there's just sort of and Ryan is so particular with what he's hearing in music. Like there was something we do performances all the time, and like he's really specific. And then there was in this, there was the two things I was proud of was actually one that it was like we had to recreate this instrumental track and then get the vocals of the actress Krista Rodriguez, who was Liza Minnelli. And the first response from like the direction of everybody, and after hearing it all together, was like, this is amazing. No notes. It's perfect. Go forth. And then there was another moment, which was actually a much bigger sequence. It was the Bonjour Paris one, which was this like huge, it was basically Liza Minnelli performed the song at this big Versailles fashion show in 1973. And there was like no video of it and no reference of it. And it was so hard. We found a reference, but it wasn't great. And it was just really hard to get that one to where it needed to be. But when the vocal performance, Krista did her vocal performance, and then we like remixed these stems in together, and then everyone was like, oh, this is what it needs to be. And then it got sort of expanded and extended to be part of this much bigger montage. I'm just really proud of like getting there on those tracks and really just like it always makes me happy when Ryan and Alexis are happy with the work. And then one other moment that I think is really great, and I just want to shout out Alexis for having really great taste in music, is the ending of Halston. There's the Cocteau Twins song, and that was a spot where it was like it was a journey because it was scripted totally different. It was scripted as like this. We're see the ballet is one thing, we see the ballet, and then the driving is something else. And it was just sort of a collaborative effort of her and the editor, and just like looking at the scene and reworking this whole ending. So it's the driving, and it's like him, Halston, driving, and then there's this performance. And I feel we had an amazing composer on Halston, Nate Barr, who I love so much. And it was like, is this a score moment or is a song moment? I think it was Alexis who found the Cocteau Twin song, and it was like this immediate winner, and like such a great one. And it's really satisfying to just have. And then of course, then they go to me and they're like, you must make this happen with every song. Every song is a must make happen with Ryan Murphy. So it's just like, that one was just really proud of. So it's being able to deliver and bring the vision to life is just, I don't have to tell them no very often. And I love that. I'm really proud of that.
Liza, what's your proudest moment for Lovecraft?
Okay, so it's definitely a poem that we used. It's called Don't Kill, Dub. It's actually from a Sonia Sanchez poem called Catch the Fire. And it was remixed about, 20, 25 years ago by one of the guys, not in air, but on that same label out of France, an artist named Rob. Anyway, it was just this B-side that I had in my vinyl collection. And it was, it's just a weird obscurity. And I pitched it to them, and it ended up in this incredible scene. You go back to Tulsa in the 1920s. This is the riots in Tulsa, everything's burning. Two of our main characters are reading the Lord's Prayer, and Atticus, our other characters, beating up these thugs, and there's fire, everything's burning up. And then you hear, the lyrics of the poem are, and she has, Sonia Sanchez, she just has this incredible delivery. And she was, in the 60s, a civil rights activist and poet. And, you hear these lyrics that are just, these words are reflecting what we're seeing. It's like, catch the fire, don't kill, brother, sister, brother. And then, so that was a cool moment. I was really like, I got chills about that scene. But then, like, it inspired our composers, Laura Cartman and Raphael Sadiq, and they turned it into an opera for the end of the show. Like, they used that poem as libretto for an opera that they wrote with a singer. I'm trying to remember her name, Janai Breuger. And anyway, it was powerful. And then it ended up, creating this other incredible score moment. And anyway, it's just a weird, convoluted thing that worked out.
Incredible. Okay, so this is a question to the panel. Have you ever considered using music from a friend of the guild?
I mean, I don't know exactly who is or who isn't. So I would say absolutely.
Yeah, love that. Okay, any tips out there for, what are the best tips to those who are looking to submit tracks for placement? Like,
coordinators. We all have coordinators. Get to know all of the coordinators.
Incredible advice. Anybody want to add to Dave's tip?
Yeah, don't send endless messages on Instagram, please.
I'll add, which is, I have a lot to say on that, and I wrote a book about it. So maybe go get that, and everything I could possibly say in this moment, I already wrote it in a book, and you can buy it on Amazon.
All right, Amanda, tell them the title just in case they don't know. They know they can get it on Amazon.
Shame. I felt like the opportunity was open for a shameless plug, you guys. But also, it is, I'm not lying. It's called Thinking in Sync, a primer on the mind of a music supervisor.
Incredible. Anybody else
want to casually read instead of just listening to me rattle off some things?
Anyone else want to throw in some advice?
I will just throw in that I used that book in my class and my students loved it. And the thing that they remember most is the catchphrase, and they still bring it back to me: be a fucking pleasure to work with. Thank you, Amanda.
Well,
it's not even someone else's catchphrase, but I will take it and use it and make it my own because it's true.
Well, you actually used it. You didn't use it in the book. You used it live.
I did. Okay, yeah, I did.
Stole it from somebody, but it worked well. I like it.
It's true.
There's a link in the chat to the book on Amazon. Thanks, Angela.
I copied.
Angela, yeah.
Good advice.
Angela has put.
Be a pleasure.
Sorry, Liza. Go ahead.
I like that. Be a pleasure to work with, and also keep it short and sweet.
No, be a fucking pleasure to work with.
Oh, right. I know, but I wasn't gonna say that part with you.
That was for like
much like John McCoy.
You're in front of 130 people. Be a fucking pleasure to work with. Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Once again, congratulations to all of you on your Emmy nominations. And thank you to the Girl in Music Supervisors. Thank you, Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO. And thank you all for that incredible conversation and to the audience with their incredible questions. So thank you, everybody.